Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So as you can see, we're back with another reading vlog, and this is honestly an impromptu / last minute reading vlog. I wasn't planning on filming a reading vlog for this book. I was literally just going to read it, give it a glowing review that I'm sure I'm going to give it, and go on about my day. But as I got further and further into the book, I realized that I needed to just talk about my thoughts with you guys and really convince you to pick up this book, as well as just pick up anything written by Kennedy Ryan, because she's just a fantastic storyteller. So we'll get into all of that in a second. But the book that I am reading for this vlog is Before I Let Go. So this is Kennedy Ryan's newest release, and I think this is actually going to be turned into a companion series. I've heard some people say that this is technically called the Skyland series, but I am really hoping that this does turn into a series because I'm really enjoying this book so far, and we have been introduced to the characters that I'm sure the series is going to follow, and I am really interested in learning more about them and their storylines and where it's going to go from here. But before we get into all of my thoughts that I have on this book so far, I did just want to go over like what's happening with my annotating process, as well as just other goodies that I got when I ordered this book. So I mentioned in one of my book haul videos that I actually ended up pre-ordering this book from a bookstore in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I'm pretty sure, and I forget what the name of the bookstore is called, but I will leave it linked down below just in case you're interested in checking them out and supporting them. I definitely recommend. But I follow Kennedy Ryan on Instagram. Before this book was released, she did go on her IG live and talk about how you could go to the link in her bio and pre-order this book and get it signed and personalized. So of course I had to jump on that because you guys know how much I love Kennedy Ryan, and so I ended up pre-ordering this book and I was able to get this personalized. Right here, as you can see, she did sign my name, and she also wrote in quotation marks, "Be gentle with yourself," and then signed her name, Kennedy Ryan. And so of course I am going to cherish this copy and this book forever and ever, because to have a personalized signed edition from one of your favorite authors is truly one of life's greatest joys, and I'm just so grateful that I have this in my collection, and like I said, I will be cherishing it forever. But when I ordered this, I also got a few other little goodies, and I wanted to show you guys those too. This is actually a graphic / fan art of the two characters in the story, Josiah and Yasmin, and I am obsessed with this. This is absolutely beautiful, and I love that this came in the package because it really helps you put a face to the names of these characters. And Kennedy Ryan is really great at fleshing out characters and providing like detail and context and descriptions about them, and so it's really nice to be able to read about Yasmin and Josiah and envision exactly what they look like. So I'm really grateful that I have this, and there's nothing on the back here except for the title and then Kennedy Ryan's signature, but I just wanted to show this off again because it's absolutely stunning, guys. Like, look at that. And the last thing that I got in this package was a bookmark, and it just has the beautiful cover art in the front here, and then it also has an author's note / letter from Kennedy Ryan. So yes, really happy that I got all of these goodies in this package, and I thought it was just a nice personal touch. So like I mentioned, this reading vlog wasn't even supposed to exist, so I did get really far in this book. I'm actually on chapter 11, which is technically page 102, and usually with my reading vlogs I like to check in with you guys in the beginning of the book and then talk to you guys again when I get to the 100 page mark, and then talk to you guys again when I get to the end. But because I'm already this far into the book, I will be checking in now. Before we get into my thoughts, I just wanted to give you guys a brief synopsis on this story. So this story follows two characters, one named Yasmin and one named Josiah, and Yasmin and Josiah were married for many years and having children, but there is a culmination of tragic events and just hardships that Yasmin and Josiah and their kids go through during a short amount of time, and it unfortunately leads to the demise of Josiah and Yasmin's marriage, and so they end up getting a divorce, and then you follow them throughout the story of them finding their way back to one another after everything they've been through. So this is a second chance romance, but it is very emotional, very hard-hitting, and there's a lot that goes into the story. So definitely make sure you look up trigger warnings because there's a lot. First thing that I wanted to talk about is Kennedy Ryan's writing. You guys have heard me talk about her writing before and how much I'm obsessed with it. Kennedy Ryan has such a way with words. I cannot get over how her writing feels so cinematic, so atmospheric, and it just gives you an overall experience. I can truly envision all of these characters acting out the actions and the dialogue that Kennedy Ryan has them saying and doing, you know? I just could see this being turned into a movie or a series, and the way that it reads just like that. I'm not sure if there's an audiobook for Before I Let Go. There might be, I'm not 100% sure, but if there is, I definitely would probably go that route if I decide to reread this book again. I can only imagine just how much more the reading experience would be elevated hearing voice actors acting out these scenes. Her writing allows you to truly connect with the characters. I have said this before, but I am a heavy character driven reader. That is what I look for in my books. I really like to be able to connect with the main characters and care about their journey as well as like the end to their story. And so I just feel like when it comes to Kennedy Ryan's books, I always feel connected to the characters no matter what. And that goes for the female MCs, but also the male MCs. I just feel like she has such a great way with crafting and fleshing out characters and humanizing them and making you feel as though that they are real people. That's how I felt when I read Long Shot and Block Shot. I felt like I knew August and Iris and Banner and Jared, and I feel the same way reading this book. I feel like I know Yasmin and Josiah very, very well, and I'm only 11 chapters in, so that speaks volumes in my opinion. There are a lot of trigger warnings in this book, so definitely make sure you look them up, but a few of them that come to the top of my mind right now are grief, death, dealing with the aftermath of having a stillbirth, and also just dealing with the trauma of going through a divorce. Kennedy Ryan gives you an author's note in the upfront and lets you know that she tried her best to handle these topics with care, and she actually did have experts read some of these passages and chapters so that way she could get it right. And I just appreciate that, because there are so many authors that do not take the time to do that, and they just write from experiences that they have never lived or have ever been exposed to, but they just decide to write it and they don't handle it with care. And it's not easy to read about these things, especially if you have lived it, or if you are currently living it, or if you just have a lot of empathy and you're an empathetic person. The next thing that I wanted to talk about here is the mother-daughter relationship between Yasmin and Deja. So I have a lot of thoughts on their relationship, and you know, it's really interesting to see more of this type of dynamic being featured in media nowadays. Like, for example, Wednesday. If you guys have seen the show Wednesday on Netflix, I'm obsessed, but if you've seen the show Wednesday on Netflix, then you know that Wednesday and Morticia have a very complicated and complex mother-daughter relationship, and that's exactly how it is in Before I Let Go. And my heart breaks for Yasmin because she's been through a lot, especially when it comes to her children. And so to see Deja have a lot of animosity and hostility and even some type of disdain for her mom is really heartbreaking to read about, and honestly has put more things into perspective for me when it comes to motherhood and what it means to be a mother of a daughter. I feel like this book is going to start a lot of conversations, needed conversations surrounding motherhood, and that it's not always going to be rainbows and sunshine, but also really speaking to the complex relationship between mothers and daughters, specifically Black mothers and Black daughters. And I just don't even know where to start with this conversation, just because my relationship with my mother isn't the same as Deja and Yasmin's. I can still recognize that mother-daughter relationships are very layered. We definitely need to make sure that we approach these type of dynamics and topics with care. And what I mean by layered is that there's obviously a lot of just patriarchal, misogynistic rhetoric and systems that are wrapped up into mother-daughter relationships. There's also the whole ongoing conversation of mothers being jealous of their daughters and, you know, feeling like they're in competition with their daughters and things along those lines. And I'm not saying that that's what Yasmin is experiencing, but I'm just saying that this, to me, opens up more conversations for mothers to speak freely about their relationships with their daughters, and vice versa, daughters speaking about their relationships to their mother. And so I just really like the fact that this book is packing important punches in so many different facets and so many different avenues. And I just really wanted to comment on their dynamic for a bit, because it is a huge point of contention in the story, and you start to find out why Deja has a lot of animosity towards Yasmin, and it's heartbreaking. It truly is, and just reiterates the fact that therapy really is beneficial for so many different people, and it's essentially needed sometimes, especially after trauma. And if a whole family goes through a shared trauma, y'all need to go to therapy. Like, y'all really need to go and talk out your feelings, so that way it doesn't get to this point. This book really does explore therapy and the Black community's relationship with therapy, more specifically Black men's relationship with therapy. So Josiah is very opposed to the idea of therapy. He looks at it as something that is not really beneficial and that is actually not going to help you. He feels as though people just go to therapy to feel better about themselves, and essentially just throwing their money away to some quack or to some shrink. And obviously that's a very stigmatized and archaic view of therapy, but this is the reality for the Black community and a lot of Black men. And so I am really happy that Kennedy Ryan is exploring that a bit more in this book and really speaking to it, and really providing some context on why a lot of Black men don't feel as though therapy is beneficial. I do have a lot of Black men in my life, of course, that do feel the same way that Josiah feels. And I've had so many conversations with them trying to get them to understand that therapy is beneficial, and you shouldn't feel like you're less of a man, or you shouldn't feel as though you're weak because you need to talk about your feelings and unpack trauma that you might have, you know? And so I just feel like the conversations that Yasmin is having with Josiah about therapy is something that I have had with a lot of the Black men in my life. And so I love that relatability factor, of course, and I just have to tip my hat off to Yasmin because like I understand what she's going through and the frustration of trying to get your point across to someone that is really like not receptive to it, you know? I will still say that Josiah's opposition to it is pissing me off. Like, I'm not gonna lie and act like, oh, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, no, it is irritating me. But I am also giving his character grace because I know that there are a lot of Black men that do feel this way, and it's something that we as a community need to speak about more and really try to destigmatize, so that way people do feel comfortable going to therapy and also talking about going to therapy. You really need to destigmatize it because it could really save someone's life, someone's marriage, someone's relationship, whatever the case is. Besides that relatability, I just identify with Yasmin and just a lot of the stuff that she's struggling with so much. I already have a fierce protectiveness over her, and there's another character that enters the story that is essentially Yasmin's antagonist, and while she hasn't done anything wrong technically, I'm still team Yasmin. And so I'm already like irritated and done with this character. Like, I'm being a little bit petty towards her because I'm obsessed with Yasmin and her character, and I just want to scoop her up into a big hug and just be like, everything is going to be okay one day. I know it might not seem like it now, but one day everything will be okay. No, she's not perfect. Yes, she's going through a lot, but aren't we all, you know? Aren't we all? So I just really love her character, and I just really cannot wait to see her come out on the other side at the end of all of this. I just know it's going to be so satisfying, and I just know it's going to be one of those like triumphant, victorious moments when, again, she comes out on the other side of all of this hardship and turmoil that she's dealing with. Especially when it comes to her depression, Kennedy Ryan did a fantastic job with really capturing the essence of how it can feel to have depression, in my opinion. Now, obviously, I know that that is a touchy subject and it's different for everybody, but there obviously are common symptoms associated with depression, and I just feel like Kennedy Ryan did a great job at really exploring that and really putting these feelings and symptoms into words and expressing those words so accurately. I just feel like all of us have ebbs and flows when it comes to our mental health, and I just think that Yasmin's story when it comes to depression and a lot of the things that she has said to other characters in confidence, I just feel like is really relatable. And I have already started tabbing a few things, which I also wasn't planning on doing, but Kennedy Ryan does that to your girl, okay? She does it to me where I just have to obsess over every single thing she's written and wanting to tab it and revisit it, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. So there were a few things that I had to just underline and just write exclamation points next to. Those are all of my thoughts so far on Before I Let Go. I'm loving this story so far. It is definitely emotionally charged and really fucking sad, okay? Like, I haven't cried yet or choked up yet. I have felt my heart tighten up a little bit at certain chapters because there are certain moments that only Josiah and Yasmin understand, if that makes sense. Like, they obviously have like little inside things that they have done while they were a couple, and there were just certain chapters where they revisited that for a little bit, and it was just so heartwarming but also so devastating to read about because like they're not together, and what they went through that led them to not being together was just one of the worst things that I think a parent could go through. Just know that by the end of this, I'm probably going to be an emotional wreck and I'm probably going to shed a few tears, but I am really happy that I picked this book up and that I started reading it because I just know that this is going to make it onto my top 22 books of 2022 list. I knew it was going to be a 5-star read for me, and I also knew that it was going to emotionally destroy me. And I really wasn't in the right headspace to read a book like this, and I'm really still not, but I know I need to read this book before the end of the year because I know it's going to make it onto my favorites list, you know? And I remember I was watching one of Jack Edwards' videos and he said, like, why do we always put off the books that we know are going to be 5 stars? Like, why do we do that? And I agree. I feel like I do that all the time where I have a book where I'm like, oh, I know that's going to be a favorite, so I just keep putting it off and procrastinating when it's like, girl, just pick up the book and read it, you know? So I am happy that I finally got out of that weird mindset and decided to pick this up because I'm loving it so far. I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm definitely going to try to get a lot further into the book today. Like I said, I'm only on chapter 11, page 102. So I'm gonna have to do the math, figure out where the halfway point is so that way I can fill you guys in on my thoughts. Just did the math, and the halfway point is page 188. And so once I get there, like I said, I will let you guys know my thoughts. clothes. Don't mind the clothes in the back on my bed. I am in the process of folding all of this stuff and putting it away, so ignore that. So it's 11:54 and I finally got to the halfway point of Before I Let Go. So I know I said earlier in the vlog that the halfway point was 188 pages, but because of the way the chapters are set up, I had to go all the way until 196, which is chapter 22, which is totally fine, and I'm glad I got further in the book because I am obsessed with this. I'm loving it, but I also have a lot of complicated feelings about it too, because there's just so much to unpack here, and there's so many different emotions and feelings that I'm experiencing right alongside Josiah and Yasmin. So I'm gonna get into them, but I do want to like word dump a little bit because I just have like so much swirling in my mind right now, and I just want to talk about it, you know? This might be one of the most cinematic books I've ever read and most atmospheric books I guess I've ever read, because I feel like I'm experiencing both the same emotions that Josiah and Yasmin are experiencing, and the chapters are alternating, so you're not only following Yasmin's POV but you're also following Josiah's, and so you really get to spend a lot of time in both of their heads and really understanding what's going on with them and how they're actually feeling about the other and just life in general. And it's just so heartbreaking, to be honest, because to read about the traumatic events that impacted Josiah and Yasmin's marriage and family, and really reading about the aftermath of those events, really reiterates the fact that sometimes it really is hard to bounce back from certain things, and that's just so evident throughout these chapters. And just flashing back to Josiah and Yasmin's marriage before they actually got a divorce. There's a specific chapter in here that details the night of their divorce and what really went down. And you can see right here that I have it tabbed because I had to write a little disclaimer to myself to let me know, like, hey, this chapter is brutal, because oh goodness, it really shook me. You could really feel the desperation and the pain and the turmoil that both Yasmin and Josiah were dealing with and going through individually but also collectively, and it really broke my heart, y'all. Like, I'm over here really upset and sad over these fictional characters and their storyline, but that's just a testament to Kennedy Ryan's talent as a writer. I just choked up so much during that specific chapter. If you are looking for a true emotional, real, raw, gritty book, pick this up. Like, I'm so serious. Definitely make sure you look up trigger warnings, but if that's the type of book that you're interested in and you're looking for, you need to pick this up, because I've never read a book like this ever. So definitely recommend giving this a read. Even though I'm not finished yet, I can already tell that this book is going to be 5 stars and it's going to end up on my favorites list of the year. This is the book you gotta read before 2022 is over. Another thing that I have to talk about and get off my chest is that I am so fucking annoyed and frustrated with Yasmin and Deja's relationship. I'm sorry, y'all. I know I already talked about it extensively in the beginning of the vlog, but I gotta talk about it again because it's really getting under my skin. Like, I understand why they are having a lot of tension and friction in their mother-daughter relationship. It's very obvious to us as the reader, but to Yasmin it's not. And so, like, that part frustrates me. It feels like Yasmin is spending a lot more time focusing on their son Kasim and what's really going on in his head, but not really taking the time to understand, why is Deja lashing out? Why is she so mean and angsty and rude towards you? Like, what's really going on? It's more than just teenage hormones. Just wish Yasmin had a bit more awareness when it comes to Deja and why she might be lashing out. But I know that the story is still progressing, and I'm sure she's going to have that aha moment very soon, because I'm, you know, at the halfway point. But it does frustrate me and annoys me that, like, that's not something that she's kind of considering or really, like, mulling over. Now I have to speak about Deja too, okay, and Josiah, honestly, because this book, I feel like, does a great job at really proving that mothers can be vilified and demonized if they are not 100% happy and maybe perfect and put together all of the time. I feel like this book has a great commentary on motherhood and parenthood overall, but specifically motherhood, and how women really do have to be a Wonder Woman type of figure in order to not get backlash or gaslit by people around them in society. That's something that I keep noticing throughout the book, is that people keep saying to Yasmin that she's overreacting because Deja's treating her badly. She's just overreacting in general and she's too sensitive. And it's like, you all understand and know that Yasmin went through something horrific, right? Like, she went through something that no parent should ever have to go through, and Josiah has as well, but obviously it's layered and there's a different conversation when we're talking about the mother, you know what I'm saying? I just, like, really hate the fact that Yasmin is being, like, vilified and demonized by the people around her and the people that should love and care about her the most. And I get that the family was destroyed and went through a really tough time, especially because Yasmin was dealing with a lot of depression, severe depression. And so I get that there is going to be resentment and animosity and hostility from some of the people in her life towards her. She didn't ask for this, you know what I mean? Like, she didn't, like, it's not like she's inherently a bad character or a bad person, but she went through something that was life-changing and so traumatic that, yeah, it's gonna fucking rock someone. It's gonna shake them. And so I just feel bad. I have so many mixed emotions about Josiah and Deja in particular, and like one minute loving them, the next minute being so angry with them and frustrated with them and wanting to jump through the book and the pages and like shake them. But it just goes back to my overall point that this writing style truly allows me to immerse myself in the story and be connected to the characters in a way that I'm not usually connected to in other books. I'm definitely starting to understand Josiah a lot better now, and obviously he's not perfect and he still does and says things that pisses me off and that makes me shake my head and so much confusion. And I just feel like with him going through therapy, it's definitely going to help him and prove to be beneficial. And I just can't wait to see his transformation and his character development as the story progresses. The chapter that goes over Josiah and Yasmin's divorce, their divorce was so scary to read about because it's so real and it's so authentic, and it happens every single day, and it could happen to any of us. And so it just really spooked me and it really put a lot of things into perspective for me in terms of like to read about how vulnerable these two were and like how the world was literally just crashing down around them and there was really nothing that they could do to stop it. And so it was just really devastating to read about all of that, like I already said. Those are all of my thoughts that I have so far. I feel like most of those were just me expanding on what I was saying earlier. I am at the halfway mark, so I am going to check back in with you guys when I make it to the end of the book because I don't want to drag out this video, especially because I know I'm probably going to be talking in this a lot. So I will check back in with you guys when I get to the end and give you my final thoughts on this book. So it's actually the next day. It's Christmas Eve and it's 12:30 in the afternoon, and I finished Before I Let Go last night, and I originally filmed my final thoughts last night, and honestly I think I need to just stop doing that and just wait until the next day where I have a clear mind and a clear head, because clearly I'm hyped up on adrenaline after finishing a book. But I decided to come back on here today to reorganize my thoughts and just tell you guys exactly how I'm feeling and my final thoughts on this book, because I have so many. Now before we get into that, I just wanted to say I'm sorry if it is loud. I do have the heat on because it is literally like 9 degrees outside right now and it is freezing in our apartment. So sorry if you hear that, but like I gotta leave the heat on, y'all. Like I'm too cold. But anyways, we're here to talk about Before I Let Go, and I just wanted to give you guys my final thoughts like I said. Now I do have my notes here. First thing that I wanted to say before I like really start to go into the nitty-gritty of like different characters and different like subplots and like the plot overall when it comes to the story, I just wanted to say that this book is so fucking sad. Like it is so sad, at least in the very beginning of the book / midway point of the book. Obviously going back in time, learning more about Josiah and Yasmin and what led to their divorce, that devastating chapter of them losing their child, and then the aftermath of it was just so gut-wrenching to get through. Like I genuinely felt my heart tightening and then releasing and then tightening again and then releasing, because there were just so many different moments that had me wanting to cry, you know, like wanting to cry. I'm a very empathetic person, and so my empathy knows no bounds when it comes to people and characters and things like that. It really doesn't take much for me to feel bad for someone or wanting to help someone because they're going through so much trauma and hardship. But I felt so badly for not just Yasmin and not just Josiah, but just this entire family. Traumatic events like these can literally destroy a family and cause so many different fractures, and it's just so devastating when you think about it. Thinking of that and just thinking of the chain reaction that death can have on a family is just so, like I said, heartbreaking and devastating. Before we get into my thoughts on the ending, I did just want to go through more of like the nitty gritty, like I said, about the characters and just like the plot overall.
Hey guys, editing me popping in here. I just wanted to say that I talked about Yasmin and Deja's relationship and how they were able to come out on the other side at the end of the story. I totally forgot to talk about it when I filmed the new clips today. I'm going to pop those clips in here so that way you can hear me speak to it. I had a lot to say about their mother-daughter relationship, and I just felt like it wouldn't have made sense if I didn't talk about it and how it rounded out at the end. So you're gonna see those clips in a second. And then after that, we'll go back to the clips that I filmed today. So hopefully that all makes sense.
Y'all heard me rant about Deja and Yasmin's relationship earlier on in the vlog. At the end of the day, we don't really get a full resolution to Yasmin and Deja's strained relationship. It's not going to be an overnight thing, which again reiterates how authentic this book is and the story is. I do like the fact that they had some type of breakthrough and that they are working to strengthen their relationship and build back trust, and Deja more specifically putting her trust back into Yasmin. So I really do like the fact that they did find some type of common ground. I just wish we could have got a little bit more of that in the progression of their relationship. But like I said, I understand that like things don't happen overnight and they don't always happen when you want it to happen. So Kennedy Ryan's keeping it real. But I will say that Deja is a funny character, and I loved her whole influencer slash TikTok stardom thing that she had going on. I love the fact that she was like a natural hair social media influencer, and I just thought it was so timely and so on brand for what's going on in the world right now. So I really did like Deja's character in that regard. And again, I thought she was funny. I do think that she grew up too fast. I do think that because of everything that the family experienced, you can tell that she definitely grew up way too fast, and that's always heartbreaking. You know, a child grew up way before they should have, and that was definitely the case with Deja. So now we're going to go to Kasim, who is Josiah and Yasmin's son. So I haven't really talked about Kasim too much because there was just a lot going on between Deja and Yasmin that I was focusing on, but Kasim, such a sweetheart, such a sweet boy. He loved Yasmin so much. You could just tell that he was a mama's boy, and I just loved him. I loved his relationship with Yasmin. You could tell that he really loves and cares and adores his parents and just wants nothing but the best for them, but also wanting them to be proud of him and to, you know, really like validate his accomplishments. And I don't know, I just really loved Kasim, and I just thought that he was such a sweet character. And I'm just so happy that he was able to also benefit from therapy and talk about his feelings. So one of the things that I really wanted to say is that my opinions on Josiah have definitely changed, and they changed for the better. I thought that his character arc slash development was the most compelling out of all of the characters in my opinion. I think I might have mentioned that earlier on in the vlog, that I know he's going to probably have the most compelling character development or redemption, just because he was very adamant on not going to therapy and talking about his feelings and expressing his emotions before. But now that he decided to go to therapy, he's more willing to communicate with Yasmin and those around him. And so I definitely warmed up to his character a lot. But more specifically, what made me realize that like Josiah is not the enemy here, and that I need to be fair and balanced with both him and Yasmin, and also understand that his pain and his hurt is validated too. He said something in the book, you might be able to understand why someone hurt you, but it still doesn't make it hurt any less. And I just feel like that rings true, not just for this story, but in real life. And especially me reading this story, I got clouded by the fact that like, well, Yasmin was the one that went through all of this physically. She carried this child, so she had not only emotional trauma, but she also had physical trauma. And so I was more so like wanting to defend her and like protect her, because like obviously men will never understand exactly what a woman goes through when it comes to childbirth. But I also had to take a step back and realize that like, while Josiah took that accountability, while Yasmin initiated the divorce, it still hurt. It still fucking hurt, you know? Especially because he loved and loves Yasmin so much. So I totally understand why he was so resistant to wanting to even like entertain the idea of maybe them getting back together or trying to make things work in the end, etc, etc. Like I totally understand that, and why he was also being very cold and nasty towards Yasmin. Does that make it right? Now I feel like that's where we can all have an open discussion and dialogue, and I feel like this book is going to definitely spark a lot of healthy conversations and debate, because on one hand I don't think that it was right for Josiah and the family in general to put all of the blame on Yasmin and to attack Yasmin and make it seem like Yasmin is the villain in this situation, when in reality she also went through a devastating loss, and again she was carrying their child. So I can't imagine exactly what was going through her head, knowing that she had to carry her baby and deliver her baby while the baby was no longer alive. Like that is so heartbreaking and so like unnatural. Like that should not happen in life, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't happen. I hate that it does, but it just shouldn't happen. But anyways, I just feel like this book will, like I said, spark a lot of healthy conversations and debate surrounding grief, surrounding accountability, surrounding what does it mean when someone that you love more than anything makes a decision that you don't personally feel as though is a right decision, but like for them it is. Like, you know, I just feel like there's so many conversations that could be had about this book, and I love that about Kennedy Ryan's writing and her stories, because I feel like all of her books can open up different conversations to different things, and this book in particular is no different. This book is very heavy on grief, of course, and death, and I just feel like from a Western lens, I can only speak about the United States because that is where I live, that is where I'm from. I am an American, but I just feel like a lot of the times in this country in particular, death is very taboo. We don't really like to talk about it. We only really like to give people a certain amount of time to grieve and just move on and bounce back like nothing happened. And I feel like this book had a lot of great commentary on that and why that is so harmful, and why we really do need to have more open discussions about death and grief, and that we can't just expect people to bounce back right away, especially because grief is not a one-size-fits-all approach, as we have seen with this story. Josiah and Yasmin both had different ways that they approached their grief, and that also led to the destruction of their marriage because they couldn't find a rhythm and meet in the middle, essentially. And so I just feel like we need to have more open dialogue about that alone, but that's a whole other topic within itself, child. I did warm up to Josiah's character, and that I understand why he was the way that he was and why he reacted to Yasmin the way that he reacted to her in certain instances. Again, could Josiah have gone about things differently? Yes. Could Yasmin have gone about things differently? Yes, but they didn't. And this is one of those books that I feel like reminds you that at the end of the day, we all make mistakes. We all do and say things that we shouldn't and that we don't mean, but you can't cry over spilled milk. You gotta just learn from your lessons and your mistakes and move on as best as you can and do better next time. And that's really essentially what I feel like a lot of the core messages were in this book. I saw so much of my father, brother, and boyfriend in him that I couldn't not like him, obviously. And it's not that I didn't like him in the beginning. I was just frustrated by his character, but I understood why he was the way that he was. So I understood that it was going to take him a lot more time to come to terms with the fact that like you have to communicate with your partner, you have to like really try your hardest to express your feelings, etc. So yeah, all in all, love Josiah now, and I'm really happy that him and Yasmin were able to have that breakthrough and find common ground. I realized that I did not talk about any of these side characters like that, and that's honestly because I really did not give a fuck about any of them. Like, if we're being completely honest, I really only cared about Josiah, Yasmin, Deja, and Kasim, which is the immediate family in this story. Those are the only characters I really cared about. Everybody else, like, you know, it just kind of felt like filler, and or like they're nice to have, but like I could do without. But we're still going to talk about them because some of them do play an important role in the story. But I just had to say that, like, that's the reason why I didn't really talk about them, because like I was really more so focused on this family and how they were going to overcome everything. And so starting with the most insignificant character in my opinion, Mark, I just felt like we could have did without Mark. Like, I understand why he was in the story, but I also kind of just don't understand why he was in the story. So Mark is someone that Yasmin is casually dating, and nothing serious is really happening between the two, but because Josiah is dating someone, Yasmin decides to date someone low-key. And so he was really just there, to be honest. Like, he seemed like a fine enough character. There wasn't really anything going on with him. I felt like he wasn't as fleshed out as obviously other characters, which makes sense because the story was not about him. But he was okay. I mean, we could have just did without him, but he was all right. The next set of characters that I wanted to talk about were Yasmin's best friends, Soledad and Hendrix. So starting with Hendrix, y'all, she kind of annoyed me. Ooh. Hendrix kind of got on my nerves. Like, I don't know. I found some of the things that she said funny, but I also found some of the things that she said really cringe and just very like, girl, why are you saying that right now? Like, there were certain moments where I really did not care for her character, but overall I still loved her dynamic and friendship with Yasmin and Soledad. I thought that she was a great friend, and I love that she always looked out for both of these two. And she also had a great relationship with Yasmin and Josiah's daughter, Deja. I love that she was the fun auntie and that she was really playing into that, and it was just really evident that like that was the route that she was going down, and I just love that for her. But I was annoyed by her character throughout most of the story, though. I will admit that. Now, this is being turned into a companion series, like I mentioned, and I feel like Soledad and Hendrix are going to get their own stories, and if that's the case, I will read Hendrix's story. Moving on to Soledad, loved her so much, and I cannot wait for her story. If she ends up getting a book, I really cannot wait to read that, because Soledad seems like such a sweet character. She is a devoted, loving mother. You can tell that she she loves her kids so much, and she would do anything for them. But there's something going on with her marriage that I'm not going to get into, and I can't wait for her story. Moving on to the last side character that I really wanted to talk about, Vashti. We got to talk about Vashti. Vashti is Josiah's girlfriend, and where do I start with her? So I originally started the story not liking Vashti because for some reason I quickly developed a fierce protectiveness over Yasmin. I loved Yasmin's character, and I truly had that mindset of like, Yasmin, get behind me, I got you, girl, I'm gonna protect you, because everybody was just coming for her, it felt like sometimes, and like attacking her and gaslighting her and making her feel like she was like the villain of the story, when in reality the blame was on both her and Josiah. Not just her, not just Josiah, it was on both. But I just feel like because she's the mother and because misogyny and all of that, I just felt like a lot of the blame was placed on her. And so when Vashti came into the picture, I was just like, oh my god, now we gotta deal with this bitch, now we gotta deal with the current girlfriend. But surprisingly, Vashti was very nice throughout the story, which I was not expecting. I was truly waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I thought that she was going to be a bitch to Yasmin behind closed doors, but it never came. She never was. She was always very sweet and nice and cordial and polite. So now I feel kind of bad. And so looking back, she really was like a decent character. She was there for Josiah, and she was also there for Yasmin and Josiah's children. She really like loved those kids, you could tell, and like wanted to make sure that they were comfortable with her dating Josiah and all of that type of stuff. So in the end, I did end up liking her character. What Josiah and Yasmin had was mythic. It was mythic, and you couldn't stop these two from being together. It just had some type of magnetic pull that most people don't experience in their lifetime. I will say though that I do appreciate Kennedy Ryan for like nipping the relationships that Josiah and Yasmin had with these people in the bud really early on, like before they got way too deep into it, because I feel like a lot of the times in romance books, these characters will not be over their ex, and they know they're not over their ex, but they'll still date other people and be like knee deep into that relationship. Like I'm talking full on proposing and everything, knowing that they still in love with somebody else, and that shit burns me up. Like I understand that that's going to be a thing in romance books, but like it does irritate me sometimes, because it's just like, why not just stay single? Or like, why not just like casually hook up with people? Like, why do you feel like you gotta get in a relationship with somebody knowing that you're not over your ex? You know, like why we not using this? So that's how I feel sometimes when I read certain romance books. So I am happy that Kennedy Ryan like did not drag out that stuff for too long. I feel like that speaks to the fact that Josiah and Yasmin are a bit older than your like traditional rom-com leads, and so they're obviously more mature, and that was really the mature thing for them to do, was them to break up with those people, regroup, and figure out what they actually want. And even though this book did have romantic elements, and it is like the ultimate second chance romance book, I still feel like this book definitely skewed more towards women's fiction and literary fiction. And on the back here, it does actually say this is like women's fiction, and there are romantic elements obviously, and I do agree with that for sure. And so I can understand why some people might pick up this book and not like it or not want to read it, because this book really does focus more so on life. It is a slice of life story with, like I said, romantic elements sprinkled throughout.
Women's stories matter.
Yeah.
Right. They just matter.
The last thing that I wanted to say that I feel like I did not touch on at all, Josiah and Yasmin own a restaurant called Grits. I just love that this story was like a love letter to Black food and soul food in particular. My mouth was watering at so many different points in the story, because there was some food that Josiah and Yasmin would bring up, and I was like, wow, I could go for that right now. I just really love the food aspect of this story, and I also appreciate Kennedy Ryan for including recipes to some of these dishes in the back of the book. I always think that's a nice touch when an author adds in recipes or like a playlist in the back. Elevates the reading experience even more. And there are also some parts of the book that I tabbed that I labeled as like cute, intimate, sweet moments that really reminded me of myself and Marcus. As much as I love fluffy, lighthearted romances and contemporary romances, still love the realistic side of romance stories too. And life isn't always rainbow and sunshines. It is very difficult, it's very hard. I just think that it is sometimes nice to have those experiences reflected in books, because it makes you feel less alone. Those are all of my thoughts on Before I Let Go. I could talk about this book for hours and hours because of just how much I loved it and just how many conversations could be sparked from this book, but I'm not going to do that because I feel like this video is already going to be long enough. So she has a plethora of books out there, and I feel like there's something really for everybody to latch onto and read and love. And so just pick up some of her books, please. You won't be disappointed. Obviously this is not sponsored, she does not know who I am, but I just love this woman's writing style, and I just think that her literary genius is just so needed and so crucial in the literary space, especially as a Black author. And so I'm always going to go up for Black authors. I'm always going to plug them and promote them because it's what they deserve, and we all should be reading more diversely anyway. Like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. And lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video like I always do. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!